On this episode of Phinside The NFL, did the Miami Dolphin players send a message directly to Tyreek Hill? Man, we're going to talk about that because we got a lot to cover regarding that situation, and it's going to be quite interesting. So we're going to talk about Tyreek Hill and if the Miami Dolphin players sent a message to him. Also, we're going to talk about Darren Waller in that situation as we get the first injury report of the season, and it's kind of strange. So we got a lot to cover, a lot to talk about. Do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new, and as always, let's get into this.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score!
Deep upfield on the near side, man open. Touchdown!
The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. It's going to be a touchdown again.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan.
Let's go!
What is good, Finn Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one. Appreciate all of you for coming through on this episode. Man, we got a lot to talk about, and thank you all so very much. I mean, we got a good one for you guys today, I think. That's for sure. We got a pretty good one for you guys. We got a lot to get into. Now, I know some of you are going to be asking, Reason, what happened to the starting lineup? I thought today was the starting lineup. Due to some scheduling conflicts, we've gone ahead and pushed that back tomorrow. So that's going to be happening tomorrow evening, ladies and gentlemen. Be out on the lookout for that, all right? So we basically had someone else who's involved kind of canceled. So we're going ahead and we're doing it tomorrow night. Now, it's looking like it's going to be at either 6 p.m. or 9 p.m. Eastern. So I will open the room up tomorrow and you guys will know exactly, but make sure you tune in for that. That'll be the debut. Now, I will say, we still have a few kinks to work out that we're figuring out. So you're going to get about 90% of the intended format, but that other 10% we're working on how we're going to incorporate it. It's a little bit more complicated than we thought it would be, but tomorrow night, make sure you check out the starting lineup, all right? It's going to be a good one. And it's going to be the debut of most of the format we had been planning for months. So make sure you check it out. All right. It is going to be on this channel this week. And next week, it's probably going to be on Douglas. And eventually, we're going to put it on its own channel. So one thing I do want to do is go ahead and shout out the sponsor of today's video. That, of course, would be Sleeper. Listen, the NFL season is here, which means you now have a chance to 1,000 times your cash on daily fantasy football. Football has never been more exciting than it is now with players like Jaden Daniels, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, and so much more. Pick on stats for these stars like touchdowns, passing yards, receiving yards, fantasy points, and more for up to 1,000 time payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right and you could win big. Use promo code Phinside and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Now, terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. But man, shout out to Sleeper. I mean, the stuff they're doing over there, you can not even just play NFL. You can play NBA, MLB, NHL, college football, college basketball, and WNBA, and so much more. So go over and check out Sleeper and use code Phinside to get a $100 deposit match up to $100. All right. Now, A couple other things I do want to talk about before we get into it. Man, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what's going on with the Miami Dolphins right now. Um, if you guys know, they had the communication portal was open to everyone. Now the Miami Dolphins have totally shifted that. Now it's a different site. You need a password. I'm not lying when I say they are gatekeeping injury reports, their weekly releases. It's really just odd behavior and out of touch behavior, really, for the Miami Dolphins right now. I hope they kind of change it up, but with the way that communication department is headed, I'm not expecting them, and I'm not holding my breath. I thought it was just very odd how they're handling that. So, okay, go ahead, Miami Dolphins, do whatever you got to do. So I thought that was very odd how the Miami Dolphins are kind of, I don't know. I kind of find it odd that they're out here, gatekeeping those kind of resources. So, I mean, they're making it basically where you're credentialed to have to see their injury report. So, and it's not a tactical thing because other teams do the exact same stuff. And there's nothing like the weekly release doesn't have like inside information. All it has is like stats, quirky stats, records that could be broken, etc., etc. I'm gonna be honest with you, man, and they're just totally out of touch. Like, it is going to be an absolute issue for anyone on social media to get credentialed by the team. They're very old school and legacy media driven, which makes no sense because legacy media is dying. But okay. Listen, PHINS rule, just throw on a VPN. You can get a VPN for your phone and you can lock in basically. VPNs work. All right? So, I mean, I'm in Ontario, but I can throw a VPN in my on my phone, and I can put I'm in Montreal or whatever, and all of a sudden the Sleeper app is going to recognize that I'm not in, the province I'm in. So, another thing too I wanted to talk about was the Under the Sun episode the Miami Dolphins dropped yesterday. If you haven't had a chance, I know a lot of people watched it. The most interesting and intriguing part of that whole thing for me was the most interesting thing to me with that whole thing to me was the conversation between KJ Britt and Willie Gay. That was the most intriguing and interesting part about Under the Sun for me. It was kind of cool to see how like they had a past and prior relationship and all of that stuff. I thought that was really cool. Other than that, like the Zach Sealer stuff, we had seen all that stuff. Like, it, the follow Tua getting up and going to the, facility at like 6 a.m. I mean, that was kind of cool. That gave it that whole Hard Knocks vibe, right? But to me, the most interesting thing was the Willie Gay and KJ Britt segment, for sure. And I just kept saying to myself, man, we got such a deep front seven. We got such a deep front seven. It's unbelievable. So I thought that was pretty cool, to be completely honest with you. I was a fan of that. But, most of it was fluff. You know what I mean? Most of it was really fluff. So, yeah, I'll keep watching it, and I'm interested to see how this goes. But let's be real here. They're not going to put up the controversial stuff, or they're not going to put up the negative stuff if anything bad happens, like Hard Knocks would kind of feed off of, right? So, and, can I also say this? What's the need? Like, didn't you guys learn your lesson from what happened with Hard Knocks and the collapse that happened? Like, maybe we shouldn't be focused on cameras and all that kind of stuff. Maybe we should just be focused on winning. So, but hey, that's not to say I didn't get bought in further to waiting for everything to start this weekend. So it's just, you know what it seems like? It seems like NFL teams are realizing the value of Hard Knocks. So they're like, let's just make our own controlled version of it. Like that's just what it seems like. Let's not allow someone else to control the narrative. Let's create our own version and control the narrative. And hey, man, do whatever's clever. You know what I mean? We're all down for more Dolphins content, that's for sure, right? So, it is what it is. I'll keep watching. Not like I'm gonna tune out. So, and hey, yeah, I was ready to run through a brick wall yesterday after watching it. I was ready. Let's go. Shout out to Finspin in the chat. Go over to Finspin. Go check his channel out. Go show him some love. He just dropped a tropical swarm warning. So go check that video out. It's short. It's only a few minutes long. Go check it out. It's creative. It's funny. So go check out what the Mad Greek did over there on Finspin. So, all right. Now, man, we're kind of taking it a little bit slower this week because it's about to ramp up starting on basically, Sunday. We'll be live twice on Sunday for the live reaction, and then we'll be doing a post-game show. Friday, we'll be doing the preview show. Tomorrow, there will be no Fin Too Deep. Instead, the starting lineup will debut tomorrow, and the starting lineup is going to rotate probably between Wednesdays and Thursdays, depending on the week and everything like that. So, and then, hey, Thursday night football, Friday game, right? And then, there's football and then college football. There's football all the way to Monday, baby. We're about to get back into that routine. Absolutely love it. So let's start to get into things. Because I haven't had a chance due to, Monday was Labor Day. Yesterday, we went ahead and we had that preseason roundtable. If you haven't had a chance to go check it out, go check it out, man. I mean, so much information. Me, Alf, Ryder, Neil, Richmond, ball game. It was just a really, really good panel. Bobby Schultz from the Dive Bar was there too. It was just a really good panel, man. A really good discussion. So go over, if you haven't had a chance, check that out tonight, all right? It was a good conversation. So let's keep it rolling here, though. Let's get into some things. And let's start off with something I've been wanting to talk about. And that was Tyreek Hill. Did Miami Dolphin players send a message to Tyreek Hill? And what I'm talking about with that is, if you haven't had a chance to see, obviously what I'm talking about is this. All right. The captains were made public just a few days ago. And for the first time in his tenure as a Miami Dolphin, Tyreek Hill is not a captain. It's Tua Tagovailoa, Aaron Brewer, Alec Ingold, Jordan Brooks, Zach Sealer, and Bradley Chubb. Now, another interesting thing here, too, is if you go back to the F1, it was Tua, Aaron Brewer, Jordan Brooks, Zach Sealer, and Bradley Chubb. 5 of those 6 captains, if you'll remember, were doing what? Right? They were chilling with Mike McDaniel literally at the F1. They even took a picture together. They even took a group photo together. Like, to me, a message is clearly being sent. And remember when this all went down and it was becoming obvious that he was going to be staying here in Miami? What was I saying? I was saying there's no way anyone should be making this man the captain of the team. There's just no way whatsoever. And I'm glad message received by the players, not from me, but by what Tyreek did. I really think this is the right move to make. I'm going to be completely honest with you right now. Tyreek Hill not going to be here next year. You might as well start pulling off the Band-Aid. And if Waddle has the season we know he's capable of having, he might be the captain next year, or one of the captains next year. But to me, this is the right move. I know there's some people that, are trying to create controversy out of it. I don't think there's any controversy. I think this is what needed to happen. I think a message needed to be sent to Tyreek that, brother, the free ride is over. The free ride is over. If you're not going to buy in, get out. And, now the other thing too is it takes a little bit of the focus off of the Miami Dolphins. And what do I mean by that? No longer when you see him hit the news wire, will it be Miami Dolphins captain and wide receiver Tyreek Hill? He represents, because the reality of the situation is he represents the team a little bit less. So, I hope the message is received. I hope Tyreek Hill does in fact respond to this positively. I hope he, like Armstead said, puts his head down and keeps working. I really do. Now, at the same time, I'll be completely honest with you. I'm not sitting here holding my breath that we are going to get a totally changed Tyreek Hill. It's hard to change the spots on a leopard, or in this case, the spots on a cheetah. He is who he is at this point. I think where we're at, we just respect Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs a little bit more for how they handled the situation. So, with me and this whole thing, Tyreek, it's not even a point of showing maturity because you're not going to be here next year. It's not even a point of, all right, let's see some maturity. You're probably not going to be here next year. So, and listen, speaking on some of those captains, Bradley Chubb, I loved what we saw from Bradley Chubb at the end of last year. I love what we saw from Bradley Chubb this offseason, taking the type of pay cut. He's looking like a leader. A guy like Aaron Brewer has really stepped in and stepped up as a leader on this team too. I think Aaron Brewer's been absolutely phenomenal in terms of, some people are trying to gaslight you all that, because of his size, he's not going to work. While you had me and others telling you, no, Aaron Brewer is going to be really good in this system, and he looks like he's a stud. And obviously the hope is that guys like Waddle and eventually like a Patrick Paul or Jonas Savaianaya could also make that list, right? I mean, all I know is thank God a guy like Liam Eichenberg didn't make that list. Zach Sealer, that's a given. Jordan Brooks, again, that's a given 110%. What's interesting to me is there's no special teams captain. Jason Sanders is not a captain. Bailey, another year, is not a captain. So, it was basically 3 offensive players and 3 defensive players. Alec Ingold, he is, and that's another thing, Alec Ingold. I mean, where we were a couple years ago, do you guys remember the opportunities Alec Ingold got in 2022? It looked like he was going to be like an instrumental part of the offense. You know what I mean? They were targeting him coming out of the backfield. Now he had some drops and misses, and maybe that led to him rearing back on him. But I always thought that adding that fullback weapon element to this offense was a smart idea and trending in the right direction. But that's another thing no one really talks about in 2023 and 2024 was they really started pulling back the reins on that idea. Right? That was very interesting to me. Because, I mean, just the opportunities have kind of gone by the wayside for Alec Ingold, especially when they weren't converting on those 3rd and shorts with him, right? I mean, what? He only had 11 receptions last year and 96 yards. He only had 10 carries. And I find that kind of interesting. Because, I mean, when you go back to 2022, he was targeted 23 times. Remember, he had 105 receiving yards in 2022. You know, it was clear they were going to try and use him as a sneaky instrumental piece, and then his targets went down to 16 the year after, but his yardage went up. He went to 119 yards, but his target share went down. And then you look at 2024, and his target share went all the way down to 12. So I find it kind of interesting how Alec Ingold looked in 2022 like he was going to be an instrumental, sneaky piece to this offense. And the last couple of years, it's kind of dwindled down, because I do think that's somewhere where you can surprise and catch a lot of teams off guard is with Alec Ingold coming out of the backfield. You know, whether you want to put him on, you know, a shoot route, an out route, a wheel route out of the backfield, whatever the case may be. You know? So I think that's another interesting thing, another interesting layer the Miami Dolphins could use, especially with the lack of quality at tight end. So, but Tyreek Hill, he did speak on not being named a captain today, and this is what he said.
At the end of the day, I feel like it's about the team, and I don't need a title to be able to lead. I'm going to continue to push the standard, you know, what Coach and these guys are pushing in the locker room, and I've always been a guy that led by example. So captain thing is great, but like I say, I'm going to continue to do the small things, man, which is work hard, show up each and every day, and bust my tail for this team. And
so there you go. He says title doesn't mean anything to him, and he's just going to continue to work hard and bust his butt and his tail for this team each and every day. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I hope, you know, I want to believe, you know, I feel like a conspiracy theorist, you know, I feel like right there by saying that, I feel like someone, you know, who watches the X-Files. I want to believe, Tyreek. I really do. I want to believe. I really do. But, you know, show and prove. And then, like I said earlier, we're kind of at the point where it's like, okay, you can show us you're more mature. You can do all that stuff, but I don't think it's going to change the outcome from next offseason. I think that's pretty much set in stone. So, you know, it's just, and then you got the whole relationship with Tua.
I would say it's good. I think for what it was earlier in the summer was just that, and I think people might have blown it out of proportion to where now, I mean, we've worked we've worked on it, and I think that conversation is dead now. I think once people see Tyreek score on Sunday, you know, everyone will forget about that. You know, so we're in a good spot, and we've been in a good spot for some time as well. So I'm really happy with that and pleased with that, and I'm very pleased with how our guys are operating now in all rooms. You know, tight ends, running backs, receivers, you know, O-line, all of that. So I'm very happy.
So Tua Tagovailoa, I mean, he thinks, you know, he thinks everything is kosher with him and Tyreek right now. You know, that it's basically dead in the water. It's over. You know what I mean? It's water under the bridge. Tyreek Hill, he talked about it, and he basically had the same sentiments.
Tyreek, Tua just said a few minutes ago that maybe the stuff with the relationship with him is a little blown out of proportion from what he said. What do you think? What do you think things are on and off the field for you guys as you enter the season?
I mean, that's typically what you guys do, blow out of proportion. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of, you know, how, you know, the views and, you know, it gets spread all over the internet. But at the end of the day, like, me and Tua know exactly where we stand at. He knows, and I know that we both have a brother. You know what I'm saying? For the rest of our life, and we're going to continue to build, man, each and every day. You know what I'm saying? Like, brothers fight all the time. Like, I fight with my brothers. Like, we go at it all the time. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, we know what the main goal is. We still family. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to continue to get better each and every day.
See, that's where I'm not buying into this whole thing, too. That's where I'm going to push back. It was not blown out of proportion. I mean, you know, from what I know, I mean, these guys didn't talk for quite some time after the season ended. Tyreek was mad at Tua for not playing through the hip injury at the end of the year. And when he told him, hey, the Dolphins are shutting me down, the Dolphins don't want me out there, he kind of pushed back and said, you're Tua Tagovailoa, you're the quarterback of this franchise. You tell them what happens. They don't tell you. And then on the flip side, Tua, like a whole bunch of other players on the team, was frustrated and mad at Tyreek for how the season ended in terms of him quitting on the team. So this whole blown out of proportion thing, I get it. Trying to sweep it under the rug now, where, you know, now it's time for the season to start. We don't want distractions. I get all that. But let's be real here. Okay? The fact of the matter is this. All right? You guys clearly had a rift. Tua might have gone too public with it. He might have talked a little too much about it, and you guys didn't want it out there. But let's not act like we're all dumb, and let's not act like the wool was pulled over our eyes and it was blown out of proportion, okay? We know what this situation has come to. Hell, when we were just talking about Tyreek not being named a captain, we're pretty much all in unison that he's not going to be back next year. Right? That's how bad the situation has got. So let's not sit here and try and, talk to all of us like we don't know what the deal is and what time it is. I mean, it's better he's out here wearing Dolphins gear right now than we see him on Instagram or Twitter in his Kansas City Chiefs old gear. I'll give you that. But at the same time, I mean, it's show and prove. And this is why it's such a big year for Tyreek. If you think about it, he's more than likely auditioning for his next team. Right? Like, that's pretty much where we're at right now. You are auditioning for your next team. So that's why I expect him to have a bounce back year. Because it's not just about the Dolphins. It's about the next team. He wants to look as good, on and off the field as possible, because what's going to happen is he's going to get traded to another team, or he's going to go to another team, and he's going to want to get as much money as possible out of that situation, because it might be his last chance to cash in a little bit. So I expect him to be a Boy Scout this year, and I expect him to bounce back statistically. So, and if Tua is healthy for the full season, I think you're definitely going to see a bounce back. But I will stick to this. If Tua is healthy this whole season, you're going to see a concentrated effort by him and Waddle to show that Waddle can carry the weight. I truly believe that. I truly believe it clearly seems they've been working on that behind the scenes. So, we'll see. We will see how the season plays out, and we are only a few days away, 4 days to be exact, away from, think about this. Okay, in 96 hours, basically, it'll be evening on Sunday, and we will know the answer to all these questions we're talking about. So, time has come for everyone to put up or shut up. That's exactly where we're at right now. The time has come. So, all right. Mike McDaniel, he went out and addressed a few things today. He says one big key to the season that begins Sunday in Indianapolis. The Miami Dolphins must regain the explosiveness they displayed in their passing game in 2022. Asked about the drop in big plays immediately after last season, Mike McDaniel said, "We have to take advantage of what defenses are not taking away." And I agree. When they consistently tried to limit deep passes by playing two safeties deep. Miami did not do that enough, finishing 28th in the league in yards per carry at 4 yards per rush. As a result, Tyreek's receiving yardage plummeted from a league-leading 1,799 yards in 16 games to 959 yards in 17 games last season. Hill and Tagovailoa combined for only 2 100 receiving yard games last season against Jacksonville and the Jets. Since the start of 2023, the Dolphins are 11-0 when Hill has 100 or more receiving yards and 17-6 when he has 99 or fewer. That's a great stat. On Wednesday, Barry Jackson asked Mike McDaniel whether the deep passing game can be fixed somewhat schematically and how much time was spent this offseason trying to fix this. A lot of times, a vertical passing game has to do with your pockets, run game, things that have to be on point. Defenses are ready to prepare to defend speed. To help threaten people in different ways, they're going to try and take that away. Much of our focus has been on those throws that you crave in every other aspect of the game. Our team likes faster drives and shorter drives as well. It's all related with downfield passing. You have to control the line of scrimmage and give guys a reason to defend space that's closer to the line of scrimmage. When you do that, things will open up. Hill was set to participate in parts of practice Wednesday after missing 3+ weeks with an oblique injury. McDaniel said his return has gone well. Jordan Brooks and said Hill looked very good and caught multiple touchdown passes during Monday's practice. Other issues that McDaniel addressed today. McDaniel noted that practices are more meaningful to the team than a year ago, it seems. They're closer intensity to that of a game. McDaniel said the team continues to be deliberate with tight end Darren Waller, who will not participate Wednesday, but will participate in red zone and third down work on Thursday. That's not because of a setback, McDaniel said of Waller sitting out Wednesday. We are being very intentional with how we practice with Darren. We have not pressed the threshold of 3 days consecutively intentionally. McDaniel said that Waller will be able to contribute during Sunday's game and joked that he will only be used as a blocker. Waller is obviously best known as a receiving tight end. Waller began practicing last week after opening training camp on the physically unable to perform list as he worked himself back after a year in retirement. While he adds a significant value to our team feels strong as we practice without him. McDaniel said Riley Patterson, who will fill in for Jason Sanders for the next 3 weeks, has given me no reason to not fully entrust him. He's done his job outstanding since he's been here. It's an NFL opportunity he's very much deserving of. Guys, over 400 of you in the room, smash that like button, subscribe if you are new. Listen, on what he talked about there, that's a very interesting stat, to be honest with you. I hadn't seen that yet. Dolphins are 11-0 when Hill has 100 or more receiving yards and 7-16 when he has 99 or fewer since the start of 2023. That's crazy. That is nuts. And that's even more reason why you got to implement. I mean, what's the deal going to be when he's gone? You know, I mean, like, let's be real here. So, you know, now he did talk about a few things here when he's talking about that whole Tyreek thing and the speed. You know, they need to threaten people in different ways 110%. All right? You know, and it all starts in the trenches with the run game. It all starts in the trenches with the run game. If you're going to be able to run the ball, then I think you are going to have a very strong offense. I think you're going to see the efficiency of Tua go through the roof. I think you're going to see Tyreek and Waddle eat. I think Malik will eat. It all comes down to that run game. By the way, I am very, very, very intrigued by Ollie Gordon as the first touchdown scorer. All right, let me put it that way. I do think Malik has a higher chance of scoring than Nick Westbrook-Akine because clearly the chemistry isn't there between the two of them quite yet. But, you know, if you're going to threaten teams vertically, you got to be able to do other stuff. Now, that said, you go look at the corner situation in Indianapolis, and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle should be a nightmare for Xavier Howard. Let's be real here. Let's be real. They should no ifs, ands, or buts. They should be an absolute nightmare for Xavier Howard. That shouldn't even be a discussion. Shouldn't even be a discussion. You know, the guy's been out of the league for a couple years, and when he was here, the lower body injuries like the groin and stuff, you know, it was starting to add up. It was clearly starting to add up. So, I don't know what to say. There should be really no excuses regarding that secondary. You should be giving them the work. You should be giving them the work 110%. All right? So, you know. Now, another thing he talked about in here, but before we get into it, let's show you guys. Well, let's talk about this. Darren Waller. This situation is very strange. If you haven't had a chance to see it, the first injury report of the season has come out, and you do have Darren Waller did not practice due to a hip injury. Now we're starting to get Ethan Bonner's a hamstring, Waller's a hip, Jalen Wright's a knee. And look at the Indianapolis Colts. They got one player limited, and look at us. All right, 12 players already. 12 players already on the injury report. Darren Waller, though. Okay, Mike McDaniel comes out and tells us, oh, this is all intentional. This has all been deliberate. Brother, you got to be ramping this guy up. He's been out of the league for a couple years. What are we saying here? I have no idea what's going on. This has been a strange situation. You know, and it feels like they're not being honest with us. You know, it kind of feels like, you know, hey, they weren't honest with us after Madison's injury until they were forced to be honest. You know, they weren't totally honest with OBJ, and then that basically, you know, that whole situation crumbled by midseason. You know, now, am I expecting them or asking them or telling them, hey, you have to tell us every truth, everything that comes out of your mouth has to be truth? No, I'm not sitting here saying that. But this whole Waller situation has been really odd because, you know, Drew Rosenhaus. I don't think Drew Rosenhaus is going to sell us on it with the relationship he has with Greer and the organization. I don't think he's going to try and ruin that by, you know, selling us on a guy who's just here to cash a check. And even Frank Smith, you clearly know this was a Frank Smith call, right? Frank Smith was behind this 110%. You know that. I know that. Everyone knows that. Do you think Frank Smith is going to put us in a situation that makes us vulnerable? Because what's interesting, too, is, you know, what's the idea here? You know, Darren Waller under Frank Smith was turned into a guy who could line up as a Y or an F receiver. He could go in line, he could block good enough, and then he could come out and, you know, he could really cause a threat. And we know last year there was a concerted effort, especially with the OBJ signing. They wanted to run more 11 personnel. But then, what happened? The OBJ thing went by the wayside. They didn't want to rely on Malik Washington. The offensive line got hurt. Jonnu Smith proved that you couldn't run. You know, if anyone saw us in 11 personnel with Jonnu, they knew a pass was coming, right? And you know that's probably what they want to do with Darren Waller. They want to implement more of that 11 personnel. The issue is, though, is he going to be healthy enough for you to rely on to run those 11 personnel looks? You know, we know this is why McDaniel would love a guy like Kittle. They want someone who can block and threaten the seams, not guys who are pigeonholed to one or the other. That's why Pharaoh Brown got cut. I mean, they keep trying to make Julian Hill work, but I don't know why, you know? So this whole Darren Waller situation, now he's showing up with a hip injury. You know, he was practicing last week. Now he's not practicing and missing practices. I mean, you should be ramping this guy up to get him to game shape. I don't know if, I'll put it this way. I don't know how impactful Darren Waller is going to be through the first quarter of this season. This feels like you might not start seeing results till games 5, 6, 7, 8 or something like that. And even still, I can't sit here and tell you what those results will be because this situation has just been so, you know, weird. Now, hey, if the woke end game of this is we're ramping him up, but we're not using him till week 3 against the Bills because we got some ideas and it works, then bravo. Okay? You know, I'll stand up and clap on air for that. But if the whole thing is this is just the path you've chosen and with no special usage or debut in mind, then this is a weird one. Let me tell you that much. So, you know, are they afraid of him furthering his injury? I don't know. But because what's really interesting too is, you know, when you look at the depth chart that they just released, right? When you look at the first unofficial depth chart, Darren Waller is the number 1 tight end on this depth chart with Julian Hill and Tanner Conner behind him. Like, that's weird. You're releasing depth charts with him as the number 1, and you haven't seen him in action. He's been battling injuries, you know, here and there. It's just been really weird how this situation has gone. It's just, you know, I don't know what to tell you. It's been really, really weird. It's been really weird. So I guess we'll see. Now, I know when people look at that depth chart, they do have a few other questions like, where's the nickel and blah, 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 blah. Listen, I'm not buying into that defense. I'm not buying into that 4-3 look. Okay? They have Bradley Chubb listed as a D end. Okay? And Chop Robinson as the other D end. I'm not buying into that 4-3 look at all. All right? You know, people are like, well, Ashton Davis is ahead of Ifeatu Melifonwu. You know how many times Melifonwu is going to be out there because they're going to be doing 3 safety looks and Melifonwu can, you know, roll to the boundary or roll to the nickel, you know, into the slot. You know, again, they got Jack Jones ahead of Rasul Douglas on that depth chart. I'm not putting a ton of stock into it, right? Until we start seeing this defense and this offense live this Sunday. I'm not putting a ton of stock into it. And I don't think you should too. Now, obviously, you know, you already know who the starters are going to be. You already know Tyreek Hill, the offensive line. You already know, like, you know, Achane and Tua and, you know, Waddle. You already know those starters. You already know Chop, Sealer, Benito, and Chubb are going to be, you know, I think you're going to see Chubb and Phillips in kind of a rotation. You already know Dodson and Brooks are starters, right? You already know Storm Duck is going to be starting. I do think Rasul is going to be starting ahead of Jack Jones. You already know Minka's a starter, but I wouldn't get caught up on that. I know everyone's like, who's starting? But at the end of the day, it's about if you play 64 reps on offense, how many reps did you play? If you play 70 reps on defense, what was the rep share? That is what, you know, the snap count share is really what I'm going to be more focused on, because this defense is going to be so diverse, especially with leads. This defense is going to could potentially be wild, the looks that we show. Really excited to see this defense. And Darren Waller is going to be something we are continuing to watch up until game day. That's for sure. Guys, smash that like button. If you're new, go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to get out of here, but I will be back tomorrow. We will have the starting lineup with me and Dougley. We'll have some Colts creators on there too, and we'll be previewing the Colts and the Dolphins. It should be a good one, a nice debate for all of y'all. All right? Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new, and I will see each and every one of you on the next one. Until then, you know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day.